More on this. Our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert, joins me on set. Hi, Douglas. So how has the IOC been reacting to this?
Let's say it's complicated for them because the president of the IOC, Thomas Bach, has been faced with a moral, a political, and a human dilemma. And what is that? On the one hand, does he totally ignore Russia's invasion of Ukraine? That is a policy that Russia would like him to take. Just ignore it. Put it aside. Shouldn't factor in. Or does he, on the other hand, totally isolate anyone who holds a Russian and a Belarusian passport? So here's where the policy takes on its sort of nuances and complications. The invites, which were sent out today, 1 year before the opening of the Olympics, the formal invitations from the IOC sent out to more than 200 countries earlier. Russia and Belarus's teams are not formally invited to these Olympics. Here's where the caveat comes in, and it is a big asterisk, if you will. The caveat is, as you said, while excluding the teams, they will allow independent, and here's the key word, neutral athletes, Russian and Belarusian neutral, independent athletes competing in these games. Now, how does the IOC define neutrality? It means, for one, that they do not support the war in any way, shape, or form, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They do not actively take part in the military. They are not soldiers in this war. So they are studiously apart from support or being part of the military. That's neutrality. As neutrals in these games, and we've seen this in the past, there's a white flag. They do not have their country's national anthems played if they win events and they're on the podium. They do not have their country's colors displayed in any way, shape, or form. Now, in their home countries, they're still seen as being the home team, as being part of those countries. They overlook the neutrality factor. But it does get complicated because the presence of Russian and Belarusian athletes, as you can imagine, riles, and a little more than that, Ukraine. But I will mention this. The IOC has been clear from days after the invasion in February. It has repeatedly, on many occasions, sanctioned Russian and Belarusian national teams. And it has made it clear that it condemns Russia and Belarus's participation in what the IOC president has called the senseless war against Ukraine. So it's been very, very clear in where it stands on what it sees as a clear invasion by two main aggressors, Russia and Belarus. Where it's been less clear is trying to straddle that line and somehow let Russian and Belarusian athletes in through a sort of back door, if you will. This would be the fifth, by the way, Olympic Games, I'll say, in Russia has been sanctioned partially or fully.
Now, you mentioned that Ukraine obviously is not satisfied. So will it take place if Russian athletes are allowed to compete?
Well, here's the whole thing. The question is Ukraine. Ukraine has taken a policy under which not good enough to allow individual so-called neutral Russian and Belarusian athletes to participate. And what Ukraine's government actually decided, passed a protocol barring Ukrainian athletes who are neutral, who see themselves as neutral, from competing in these events. Now, this has drawn a sharp response from the IOC, which has condemned Ukraine for essentially not allowing its own independent neutral athletes from competing, saying that that is going too far. If these athletes are against the war, if they come out publicly against the war, if they are not part of the military, why should they be punished for the actions of a government that they do not necessarily support? But at the end of the day, they still are, in a sense, representing their countries. They hold a Russian passport, a Belarusian passport, and they're competing in these Olympics. So you can see this is not an easy issue. But so far, from the perspective of the Ukrainian sports ministers, officials, and Zelensky himself, if you come as a Belarusian or a Russian passport holder and compete in these games, you are the neutral flag, as they see it, is stained with blood. There's no distinction made here. And I will just note in leaving that the Ukrainians have already barred their athletes, bans their Ukrainian athletes from participating in several world or European championships in events like judo, in fencing, in taekwondo. Watch this space because this could still evolve, this position. The invitations have been sent out by the IOC. The teams aren't invited. Individual neutral athletes are still allowed to participate. Might that evolve? Might that change? Who knows? Like I said, watch the space.
Whoever said that there was no place for politics in sports, Doug Herbert, sounds like that's certainly not the case for the Olympics. Thank you very much.